open meeting of the Dover-Sherborn and Dover-Sherborn Regional School Committees for Tuesday, July 14th, 2020. This open meeting is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020. Information on how to join remote school committee meetings and meeting agendas are posted on the Dover-Sherborn District website. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. Please be aware that anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. So the first item on our agenda is community comments. Just indulge me, I need to read the script verbatim because I want to get it right. So hold on one sec. Community comments are an opportunity for members of the community to be heard. We respectfully request that you please make your comments brief, 2 to 3 minutes, and that you move the discussion forward by adding new information. Please try to avoid repeating points that have already been made. Community comments are an opportunity for us to listen. It is not a forum for answering questions or engaging in a debate. Once the public comment section of the meeting has been concluded, we will move on to other business, and unsolicited comments from the community will no longer be permitted. This is standard operating procedure on all our 3 committees. I'd like to say, to reiterate that during these uncertain times, we greatly appreciate that you've taken the time to be here and participate, and we always encourage you to reach out to your school committee members. Alternatively, there is a dedicated email that you'll see later in this presentation around reopening. And we will have some more of these meetings this summer on July 28th, August 11th, and the 25th. So having said that, are there any community comments? Please raise your hand.
Yes, my name is Jing Long. I don't know if, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Can you
my name is Jing Long. I live in Grand Hill Drive. I think this will be my first time to join this meeting, to attend this meeting. I have 2 kids. One is high school, one is going to the middle school, the coming fall. And I'm just thinking that how can we, how we can help, as a parent, to make the kid learn more effectively, because I can see that the remote learning really encounters some difficulties for the kid. I think for many parents too, because some parents are not very productive. They are fear that they can lose their job. So I just like to bring a couple of points. First, can we do a little bit more open space learning? For example, take usage of the auditorium, even the cafeteria, so have bigger space so the kids can be more safer. And secondly, that I'm even thinking that maybe we can open the school at night so the kids can go there, something like a study group. And then as a parent, we can volunteer to be a moderator. We are not going to teach, we are not going to assign homework, but we just go there and then to make sure the safety of the kids, so the kids can do some social. I really think that the social is very important for the kid. If they cannot see the friend and other person for months, that can create quite a bit of a psychological problem. Because I myself, and then also my friend, as like in Brown University, the faculty, they already pointed out that it can be a big negative effect. So I just hope that the school committee can think about this and then really give a chance for the kids to go to the school in person. As possible as we can, as much as we can, and then really that to consider that the negative effect to the family, to the parents, if the kid cannot go in person. And then I know that many research about the resources, the state level and on the national level also pointed out that for the kids, they are kind of like a low risk. It's attracting the virus and low risk in transmitting the virus. But I understand that for many faculty members, that probably there will be some concern. And then for some parents, and then for some, especially for the household that have elderly, that will be concerned. So that's just my point, is that whatever that the parents and the neighborhood can help, I think the committee can also ask, at least myself, I'm ready to help.
Thank you so much. I can't see you, Jingping. Are you, is that complete?
Yes,
Okay.
complete.
Thank you so much. There you are. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Mr. Lin?
Yes, thank you very much. This is John Lin. I live in Dover. I have 2 kids in Chickering this coming fall, and my oldest will go to high school, 9th grade. So just a couple of quick points. First, I want to commend all of you for your service for the school committee. All eyes on you. You have a heavy responsibility burden. We appreciate that. Second point is, as parents, I just sort of reminder, we have a unique position in this whole conversation. We have educator, administrators here, and the parents and students / children. The parents, we have two sort of a dual role. We are taxpayer, we are citizens and we are residents, so we pay the bill, pay the money. We pay educators, so that's very special. It's a cliche, but people need to be reminded that. So second is, children are our children, right? We care about our education for our children. So we really want to be that kind of emphasize on this whole equation. I understand we want to balance everybody's interests. Everybody want to save, but parents did have this unique position here. The next point is about DS, the reopening. Looking forward to hearing all the suggestions from Dr. Keefe and other folks on the task force. But I just want to say, state has minimal requirements, but we are DS. We want to be a leader in this new normal, in this crisis, in this new normal. If we want to be a leader, we want to be creative, flexible. We hear parents' voices and teachers, everybody, but we balance all the interests, but we want to be creative. Like Mr. Long said, different ways to do that. Parents can pitch in as well, but we want to create. I don't want to hear again say, state 99% all over is state requirement. We like following one minimal requirements, but we are local because, as I said, the first point is we pay $28 million. State didn't pay that. The country didn't pay that. So we pay those heavy investment for our children. So use our money wisely, right? Balance the interests. So that's one, flexible, creative, to all the things we can do. And the last point I want to say, whatever way we go, if we go to hybrid, meaning some distant learning, or we go for distant learning, if crisis happen again, resurges, parents need a support. Parents have job to do and job security and job growth, a lot of things. We cannot spend 80%, 70% of the time, hand holding our children for distant learning. The last 3-4 months, a lot of us did that. We okay. We glad to do that, but we need more support. 15 minutes Zoom meeting, 20 minutes Zoom meeting, 2 days a week or every day doesn't cut it. Right? Children and the students and parents do need a lot of support. So we need to be creative with that. And so that's my comment. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you so much. Amy Hamel? I see your hand. Oh, you're on mute. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. I have a 5th grader who will be at Chickering and a 6th grader who will be at DS. And I just wanted to say briefly that I think our community is unique in terms of people's ability and desire and willingness to help. And a thought that I had that I really appreciated in the survey today was that question about the bus, because people have an affirmative right to have their children brought to school on the bus. But if I'm given the affirmative opportunity to say, thank you, I know I have that right, but I will affirmatively give it up, to the extent that that's something that lawyers address, I don't know. But I'm very happy to evaluate what that is and affirmatively give it up if it's easy for me to do so, if that can be part of allowing the school to happen in person. So I imagine that there's several things that are like that, but I think that to John's point, is something that's unique about the community that we're in. We are fortunate that their members of our community have more flexibility and more ability to do things for their children. And if that can add to the things being open in person, then if I'm given the opportunity to give it up, I'm happy to do it. And thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any other community comments? Dawn, help me. There's a lot of pages.
I think they might jump to the front though if they're using their hand raising. Yeah, there's no other hands raised on the unless anyone's raising their hand. If you can't do your raised hand and you want to just take yourself off mute and announce yourself, we can do that too, just to make sure everyone has access.
Yeah, I don't want to forget anyone. So I'm going to wait a minute and see if we hear anyone. No? Okay, thank you so much. The next item on our agenda, probably why you're all here.
Amy Van Langan has her hand up.
I'm sorry, where is that? Megan?
Oh, she just came up.
Amy Van Langan.
Yeah.
You know what? It's okay. You guys go ahead.
No, go ahead. We're still good. You're good. Go.
I was just going to reiterate a point made earlier that I and my husband have talked a lot about how we would be willing to volunteer our time if having parents aid or assist in any way would be helpful. And I hope that that's something being considered if it's possible under the new regulations.
Sorry, I just see your picture there, so I couldn't see your hand.
And is Amy a Dover or Sherborn parent?
Incoming Sherborn kindergartner.
Welcome. Okay.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Anyone else? I don't want to miss out on anyone. Do you think there's, again, always opportunities to reach out to your school committee representatives, and then in the presentation there'll be some other suggestions. So, and you saw the survey today, I hope. So we're eager to gather information. So the next item on the agenda, and before we get into the fall 2020 reopening task force update, I want to, and I'm sure I speak for everyone here on the committees, thank our district leadership team, educators and staff who are literally working around the clock to try to make sense of what this is going to look like. It's being part of these discussions myself, it's kind of beyond comprehension, the task that's in front of all of you. I see Jill there as well. I mean, they are living and breathing this. So we just want to reiterate that we're so grateful for your time and expertise, all of you, and give you our support. And with that, Dr. Keogh, over to you. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully I can do that, Dawn.
I believe so. Give it a try.
Okay. Nope, I'm disabled.
Hold on. It says all.
Okay, here we go. Okay, hang in there with me, folks. Okay, good. Can everyone see that? I can't see if people can see that, so let me just.
Yeah, it's on the screen. You're good.
Yes, we can see it.
We can, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, awesome. So thank you, everyone, and welcome to this, our first of the reopening task force updates. As a reminder, these will take place every 2 weeks, as Brooke said, the next one being scheduled for July 28th. I want to thank all of our stakeholders who've participated in this process and who've offered ideas and insights, because we've really, we've had tremendous support from our faculty and community members, family members, staff. So many people have written to members of the task force or have participated, and the feedback is actually really, really helpful, albeit overwhelming at times, but it is helpful. Let's see here. I'm not quite sure why that didn't work. Hang on, folks. There we go. So, so as you'll note from Commissioner Riley's initial guidance for reopening, his goal and that of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed is to safely bring back as many students as possible to in-person school settings to maximize learning and address our students' holistic needs. He knows and we know our children desperately need and value school and all that it provides, and that if trends and infection rates en masse allow for us to return to school safely, we must try to do so, even if things look dramatically different under the new model. So I don't want to belabor the guidance from the state, but I do want to mention that we do take our direction from the state. We have to. We're public schools. We're not a private school. That is a misconception. We perform like elite private schools, but we are actually a public school, and we do work under the direction of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed, and ultimately the Commissioner of Education, who answers to the governor. So some of the key takeaways from the guidance, though, was obviously that the medical experts consulted by the state are indicating that they believe that schools can operate with proper safety measures in place, and that young people are not the, quote, super spreaders as once believed. This is not just based on one sampling. There are many schools, especially in Europe, that have reopened and successfully. And they're not seeing upticks in infections. I know in this age of the internet, it's always easy to find some situation that's an outlier situation. We have to kind of stay focused on the big picture, and in the big picture, it looks like schools and young people in general are not the super spreaders. So that's important. The state is requiring us to submit plans for 3 different scenarios. So one of those is obviously in-person learning with these new safety requirements. Another is all out or remote learning, such as we had in the spring. And then the alternative, the third option, is hybrid learning, which is combining some live instruction with remote instruction. The guidance also speaks to districts and schools aiming for 6 feet of distance between individuals when at all possible, and to lay out classrooms with 3 feet minimum distance between seats and 6 feet maximum. We have already taken a shot at this and know that we can do this, but I'll speak to that in our facilities section. Another important piece that can't be overstated is that parents in this model are going to be responsible for daily health screening. And by that, this model, I mean anything that involves the kids coming to school. Parents will be responsible for checking their kids, and I think what many people are concerned about is a kind of a famous pastime for those working families out there, and I admit we were guilty. If your kid has a slight fever, you give them Tylenol, it works for 3 or 4 hours, and the kid's good to go. That can't be an option for families anymore. If your child has a fever, you can't send the kid. So parents are gonna be responsible for a big piece of this. So the folks who said the parents can help, well, this is the first place they can help. Students and staff grades 2 to 12, according to the guidance, must wear masks, face coverings during the school day, but should be provided opportunities for mask breaks. And that will be hugely important, both for staff and students. It's important to point out that as I move through this, something that I think many people do not understand. I understand and I get that people are anxious for a decision. They want to know what we're doing so they can start to prepare. We have specifically received guidance from the commissioner that we not do that. He is suggesting that those decisions wait until late July, essentially the end of July and very early August. Now, obviously, having had 3 children of my own and having had a wife who worked as much as I did, that strikes me as late. But in this particular situation where we don't know where the virus is headed, whether or not the infection rates will shift, he believes, and I agree with him, that it wouldn't be prudent to hitch our wagon to an idea that could very well change very soon. And in that same vein, it's really important to emphasize that things are changing all the time. We're constantly waiting for specific guidance, rendering a decision, and what will be best for us here at DS. And it doesn't, it's as I've said before, it's like the goalposts move from day to day. It literally is like that. And if you add into the public debate that takes place, say, on Twitter. I was on Twitter for a few minutes last night and noticed a big argument about whether schools should reopen and is it safe for teachers. But nobody had to state where they were from. So if you were having that debate with someone from Massachusetts versus someone from, say, Florida, that's a whole different conversation. So we have to watch ourselves and not commit ourselves to anything too early because things are changing. The other thing that's really important to point out is that, as I've said before, and I'll say again probably throughout this year, we don't have the energy, frankly, to go down rabbit holes of speculation. So we can't think about all the possibilities of the things that might happen. Obviously, we have to concern ourselves with the possibility of 3 different scenarios based on what might happen. But we can't go way down this route where we're expending all of our energy on something that actually has about a 1% chance of happening. So we have to hold ourselves in check in that regard. So in that vein, the government or the commissioner has also stopped short of giving us guidance in very important places. So they've promised us, and we're counting on it, that we'll be provided with reopening checklists, that we'll receive specific guidance on what to do in the event of a positive case, a case in the classroom or in the school. What do we do? There's talk that the state will be able to provide online learning platforms beyond those offered by individual districts this year, which families could opt into, as well as other online resources or programs that school systems could use to enhance remote learning. School districts are expected to receive further guidance related to entering and exiting the building, cleaning, disinfecting the building, ventilation, procurement of supplies, food distribution such as lunch, and signage. So they have not really formally given us that information. We've got a lot of speculation again out there, but we haven't had specific guidance. So it's really difficult to make a decision without knowing exactly what's being recommended. We're anticipating a great deal of guidance related to transportation. Possible alternative schedule options, bus capacities, and physical distancing directions. That's probably the biggie. How many kids can fit on a bus and how closely can they sit to one another? And a simple example of that would be, I would expect that the state would say all members of one family could sit together on the bus. They don't all have to take a row or a seat. So we expect that guidance, but we need it. We need it because it is not necessarily a deal breaker, but it's really important. That's why it was included in the survey this afternoon. We're expecting much further guidance related to special education services and other student supports. We know that some of those, some of our students suffered in this model of remote learning, especially some of our special needs students who need more attention and physical attention. And so that has not been ideal, and we're expecting more guidance in that regard. We're waiting for guidance related to all before and after school programming, including athletics, extracurriculars, electives, and extended day programming. So these are big, big, big issues and really important to our families. So we are going to share it with you as soon as we know more, but right now we don't. We anticipate some changes to the key state requirements. For example, we think that they are going to show us flexibility in our calendars, that potentially we may not be held strictly to the 180-day requirement that we've been living with for so long. As you know, if we have a snow day, we have to make it up. Why is that? Because we're obligated under the law to do 180 days. We think that there's going to be flexibility on that. That's important because it may allow for us to have more professional development time prior to our students coming in. So we're waiting again for guidance in that regard, but I think that where the commissioner is going on this is that if perhaps we could have the week before Labor Day for teacher training and teacher preparation under all these new systems, that would be really helpful. And at the same time, not having to extend our school year out. So I think that that's a real possibility. Same thing with 990 hours at the secondary level and 900 at the elementary level. Those are currently the law. What if we had to do a hybrid model and we couldn't do full days? We couldn't get the full number of hours that we typically get. Would the state give us any relief in that regard, or would they still continue to hold us accountable for those hours? I don't think so. So I think that these are important pieces that we're still waiting to hear on. So I've mentioned this before, so I'll be quick, but the executive committee, the reopening task force is really 3 levels. So the executive committee is the central office leadership, our lead nurse, Jill Fedor, who's on, and our technology director, Anthony Ritacco. We meet every Monday morning and talk for a couple of hours about some of the bigger overarching issues. And then we work with our steering committee, which is the full district leadership team. And we're including Dover-Sherborn Education Association representatives because they obviously are hugely important in this process. And I see that they're on tonight too, which I appreciate, Laura and Anna. So as I mentioned earlier, we have subcommittees of the task force, and these are the categories that we're focusing on. So facilities, health and hygiene, teaching and learning, transportation, before and after school programming, and communications. So what I'd like to do is kind of follow a process similar to what we've done with the reopening task, with the start times task force, which is to give you kind of in this case, the key guidance from the state related to facilities, and then talk about the steps that we're taking to address these things and the remaining work to be done. So obviously the distancing requirements, we're going to obviously aim for 6 feet, even with our desks. We think we may be able to desk, seat to seat, probably if you had a 3-foot seat to seat requirement, you'd actually have a 5-foot nose to nose requirement, reality. So, we're looking to get as much a maximum distance between the kids when possible, and obviously leaving space for the teachers up at the front of the room. But there's real guidance there, and I'm sure you have seen it at this point from the state. The configuration, obviously, the desks and seating should be facing the same direction. So that's a big change for us. It's a change in our culture. So if you think about it, we frequently have kids sitting around desks, lab tables, for example. The state is saying, and the CDC are saying, at least currently, that you shouldn't be facing each other when you do that. So if we were to put plexiglass on lab tables so that the lab tables could be sectioned out, they still wouldn't be able to face each other. So we're hoping for some relief in that regard, and that, in fact, that might change, and that's still possible. One thing that's clear from the guidance is that there aren't required maximums on the cohort or group sizes as long as we're adhering to physical distancing. So one of the incorrect beliefs or positions out there is that you can only have a certain number of kids in a room. That's just not true. It was originally stated for the summer school guidance of no more than 10 kids, but that has since changed on this. So cafeteria spaces is another thing. We'd heard that you couldn't use cafeterias. That's actually not true. We can use our cafeterias with the 6 feet of physical distancing. And again, we're looking into whether or not kids can face in the same direction, because that would make all the difference in the world. So guidance still needs to be received regarding entry and exit procedures, cleaning and ventilation, and food distribution and signage, as I've mentioned. So some of the work that we've done, the facilities subcommittee work thus far is we've done the sample classrooms, as I mentioned. And we do believe that in all 4 schools, we have adequate space to accommodate a full return of students. One thing that will be important is obviously decluttering. And it's really unfortunate when you think about it. We spent so much time, the Innovation Committee spent a ton of time looking at the best teaching practices and the most engaging teaching practices and the most engaging settings for learning. And a lot of it involved more comfortable seatings, more comfortable tables. A lot of that, unfortunately, has to go. So we have to store some items and set up in a very streamlined way that will allow for efficient daily cleaning. We have already put up plexiglass barriers in the main office spaces as well as the guidance spaces at the region, and they routinely serve students, parents, and outside vendors. So we know this is working, and I think most people are used to it in the new normal. So obviously, as guidance is received, we want to move quickly. We do have this remaining work, our HVAC contractors on board to assist us in maximizing our air circulation and filtering. We know this is an important consideration, and we want to make sure that the units that are providing air into our buildings are effective, strong, that the air quality is good, and we're confident that this is not going to be an issue, but we're going to have experts working with us. We know that we're in a better place than a lot of systems, because especially at the region and Chickering, because we have fairly new schools. But Pine Hill's air circulation is also excellent, and they also have very good windows. So we feel like we're going to be okay in that regard. We have various sources identified for procuring required signage, and plans are being discussed to stagger flows and limit unnecessary passing. In the health and hygiene, and I know that there are members from that committee on tonight, but I'm going to try and do justice to this. And then if at the end they want to chime in, that's excellent. But obviously the health and safety of staff and students is a top priority. The state's guidance in this regard is the mask, the face coverings, the physical distancing, additional safety precautions for school nurses. So they are going to have a different PPE, and we will need COVID-related isolation rooms in each of our schools. So if somebody is suspected of being sick, we will need to isolate them, and we'll need a place to do that. Daily home screening guidelines for families. We want to be sure that people have the tools for checking their kids before sending them in. And hand hygiene protocols, up-to-date immunization records for students and staff. We are definitely hearing that that people are the state's going to want people to get flu testing, flu vaccines. I'm sorry. So, but up-to-date immunization records will also obviously matter. So thus far, the committee has worked with Dawn, our business administrator, to to order these safety supplies, and we're making good progress in that regard. We're pretty confident that we're going to get there. We have quite a few masks, for example. but there's other PPE that we need to still acquire, and we're confident we can get it. I know this committee has sent an initial communication to all of our families outlining key points to returning in person, like face coverings and monitoring for symptoms and vaccines. We've updated guidelines and protocols for students and staff who are ill, dismissal from school or work, referral for testing, hand hygiene protocol as mentioned, instructions on face coverings, how to wear, take off, and store. You know, just along these lines, I've had a few emails come forward from folks who said their kids really don't like wearing masks, and I understand that. I totally do. And there may, in fact, be physical issues or other special needs that make it impossible for students to wear masks. But overall, the expectation for grades 2 through 12 is that kids will wear masks. And I would encourage parents to have those discussions with kids as the summer progresses. And the way I would bring it forward to my children would be to say, look, we have an expectation. We had expectations that you used car seats when you were children. When I was growing up, we didn't have to use car seats, but we've since learned that they're important and the kids get used to it. Same thing with seat belts. It will be the same with face coverings. So we're gonna need parent support on that. So there's obviously a list of remaining work, but you can see that a lot of it, again, is depending on protocol, guidance. One of the things I'm very grateful for that Jill has been able to establish is a great working relationship with the Dover Board of Health and with the Sherborn Board of Health. And I know Matt Vitale is on here from the Sherborn Board of Health. I don't know if there are other representatives. I don't know if Kay Peterson is on here, but they're members of this subcommittee. And they are really, really, really hugely helpful to us. They know what they're talking about, and we trust them to give us guidance on any kinds of things that come up along the way. So this is a great, great group of people doing this work, and it will continue. So teaching and learning, as a couple of folks, John and Jing mentioned, we have a lot of interest in the teaching and learning. Families do, but we do too. You know, you have to remember, we jumped out of school on March 13th, and a week later we're remote, and that was a big achievement, if you ask me. And the reason it was a week later was we basically used our snow days to get prepared. That was a huge undertaking, and we've learned a lot. Just imagine how much people have learned. And so we know that there's more that we can do, whether we're remote or in a hybrid. We actually know that there'll be a lot of technology used in person. So in many ways, this is a silver lining. We've learned how to use the technology, and our staff continues to learn how to use the technology. But obviously, the 3 learning plans will be due at the end of July to the state. I don't think there's anything really new in this list, but we're going to have to think through, obviously, things like daily and weekly schedules. What will those look like? Especially if it's a hybrid model. How many kids would be allowed in a building at a time? Do we want to, we want to do a day in, day out type model? Do we want to do a week in, week out? Do we want to do 2 days in, 3 days out? All of those are possible considerations under a hybrid model. So we have to think about faculty and who have potential medical conditions that could impact their ability to teach. We have obviously kids who may not be able to attend, so we're going to have to think about how we work that in. And technology upgrades and requirements are something that the state is asking us to look at. Quite honestly, we're in a much, much better shape than many of my colleagues' systems. We did have the technology, and we're able to make sure that every kid had a device during this last remote experience. That was hugely helpful. Some of the special ed guidance shared on July 9th was prioritizing in-person instruction for students with disabilities, particularly preschool age students and those with complex needs, and increasing family engagement in order to gather input and discuss plans for providing services. So some of the work that this subcommittee has done, and it is the biggest, I should say, of the subcommittees, and has broken into subcommittees of the subcommittee. But they've collected feedback on the remote learning experience through surveys, focus groups, and interviews. Obviously, we don't know how we're doing if we haven't asked people. How did it go? So some of the feedback that we heard a few minutes ago is feedback that we've heard through this process. So that's it's helpful, but quite honestly, it's not new. We've gotten that message from folks, and we want to be better if, in fact, we do go to remote. To that end, we've sponsored over 19 professional development opportunities focused on virtual learning and meeting the needs of diverse learners and social emotional wellness. The social emotional wellness in the remote model is a pretty tricky thing. So one of my concerns, honestly, as an educator, is if the students never meet their teachers, will they just enter into a Zoom and form relationships? I think that's a really big ask. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think some form of in-person education, if at all possible, if the numbers hold, and I pray that they do, that our infection rates are low in Massachusetts and we can have some kind of in-person education so our students can get to know their teachers, that to me will be very important. Thus far, we've funded 230 plus workshop days for faculty, collaboration and planning. So a big part of this is why reinvent the wheel? Some of our teachers are really good at some things and not so good at others, and we can teach each and learn from each other. So that's been important. And investigating improvements in technology for all students and staff. So as an example of that, the computer that I'm using right now is a new one. And it came from, I believe, from a grant from the middle school PTSO or positive. And I believe this is where it came from. I'm not sure. I'm borrowing it for the day because mine was not working. But it is a really cool technology in that you can flip this laptop over and it has a touch screen. And one of the concerns for our teachers through this feedback that we learned was that it's really difficult to teach without having some kind of touch screen. And in the larger classroom, that would look like the whiteboard. But now they can do this on these kinds of laptops. So this is something we've been pursuing, and we're hoping we're going to be able to have all that technology in place for the fall. So we've launched a subcommittee of 65 plus members that's representative of all stakeholder groups, and we're currently refining our remote learning model. So obviously in the remaining work, and again, this is our first update, but as the summer goes on, we would hope to have more information about the hybrid models that we would consider and recommend, including in-person and remote components. Update our in-person learning model to reflect current guidelines and safety regulations, continue our student data analysis and utilization of evidence-based intervention systems, expand the repertoire of virtual assessment strategies and update grading protocols. So obviously the grading protocols and how we're going to grade matters. We have more time to think about this and more time to determine whether or not we would actually grade in the remote model. So I think that will look different. I'm going to keep going here. So as I mentioned earlier, the guidance related to transportation and activities beyond the school day doesn't really exist.
Can everyone just make sure they mute, please?
Can everyone mute, please? So thank you. So as I mentioned, we don't have the specific guidance related to school transportation and activities outside of the school day, but we have definitely done some work in the realm of transportation. Discussions have already started with Conley and Eastern Bus. Conley is the bus company we operate with in Dover and Sherborn. Eastern is with our Boston students. But we've had the conversations with them about regular cleaning and sanitizing of buses on a daily basis. We've been evaluating various options for drop-off and pickup locations at school to disperse flow of students entering and leaving the buildings. We don't want all of our students coming in the one main entrance, so we need to think about that, and we are. And families are being asked, as you noticed today, their plans for utilizing bus transportation versus parent drop-off pickup. We actually never received guidance from the state related to communications, but we know obviously how important it is. Some of the work that we've been doing in this regard, this subcommittee has been meeting regularly and gathering research related to school reopenings worldwide. Again, we don't want to just look at a small little sampling. We want to see what places have done throughout the world where there were varying rates of infection and how they managed it. And it's been really helpful to do that. Obviously, you know, I've been using Screencastify to communicate important updates to staff and families. We've created a dedicated email account, which Brooke referenced earlier, for receiving and responding to staff and community feedback. This is really important. We did the same thing with the start times task force. It's helpful for us to receive the questions and to respond to the issues people are facing. So it's obviously dsreopening@dover-sherborn.org. This slideshow will be linked to the web page, so you can easily access this at your convenience. We've created a schedule for reporting these updates to all of you folks. We distributed the survey for families today, and we're planning a staff survey for later this week. And I've been consulting with area superintendents on developing similar hybrid learning schedules. So it's really important for our faculty that we do this. They are obviously hopeful that whatever hybrid model we come up with will be similar. This is our faculty who have young children, will be similar to the model being used within their school systems. And this is another reason why the commissioner is trying to get us all on the same page. Because when we're all doing things dramatically differently, you get into this competition and pitting of each other, of one system against another, and it's really not productive ultimately. It's a huge time consumer to have to respond to that. We still want to do more work with our communications. We want to continue to review and revise the district web page as it relates to reopening. And while I have this opportunity, we had a communications task force in general for the system that was looking at our web page. And the goal was to kick this off next year. Unfortunately, we got completely derailed by the coronavirus, but we know we need a new web page. We think there are improvements that we can make in that regard, and I want to thank Beth McCoy, our assistant superintendent, who put together the coronavirus component of our web page, which is, I think, much more interactive and hopefully helpful to families and to staff, and we want to continue to use that and make it as user-friendly as possible. We're obviously going to continue to survey families and staff because these things are changing. We will ask people what they think about hybrid models, what they think about, especially about hybrid. So that is ongoing. And obviously for communicating the finalized planned model for reopening. But I suspect my goal is that by the end of July and early August, we'll feel much more concrete about the direction we're going. Again, you know, everybody knows this could change on a dime. It could change really quickly. There's been a lot of travel this summer. People are going all around the country. Our numbers could go back up, and we have to constantly be prepared for that possibility that even what we have planned come July 31st, for that possibility that it could change prior to opening. That's the world we're living in right now. So we know that that's the reality. And then obviously we want to ensure that the work of this task force is being communicated and people know what's going on. So nothing really new here. Obviously our 4 dates are there, but as I mentioned a minute ago, you know, the key period, if you ask me, is that July 28th meeting, our next meeting, 2 weeks, we're supposed to have our 3 models due to the state. And I think once you flip that calendar to August, we really need to know, I would say, even as late as it would be, we really have to nail things down in that first week of August. It needs to be established. So I've linked some really valuable resources here. There's so much out there. This particular one is just awesome. A parent sent this to me. I think you folks will find this incredible. There's just so much here: singing, band, athletics, busing, really good stuff from MGH. So I am definitely suggesting people check that out. Okay, wish I hadn't done this. So hang on, folks, sorry. The APA guidance for school reopening. The APA, the American Academy of Pediatrics, actually did provide a statement, much like they did with the start times, regarding reopening. I think that they've adjusted their language, but they are definitely recognizing that kids need to be in school. This is why the commissioner is pushing for it, and I agree with him. The kids need to be in school. We need to find a way to get the kids back to school safely for them and safely for our teachers. But that's interesting reading. The CDC guiding principles when reopening schools, the reopening, obviously, the initial reopening guidance from the commissioner, and then our webpage. So with that, for our school committee members, I will open it up to your questions. I know we have a lot of our task force members here. For our folks at home, again, I invite you to email the dsreopening@dover-sherborn.org. It's a great place to provide us with your insights. So there you go.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Keogh, and thank you all the task force members who are here and those that aren't here for all the work you're doing. It's overwhelming, and there's no easy answers. I know we all want more certainty, and we have to learn to live in a flexible space. So thank you. School committee members, any questions for Dr. Keogh or any of the task force members? Michael. Oh, sorry. Michael?
Maggie, did you have?
No, I just also saw Ann Hubby has her hand up, so just
okay.
After Michael. Thank you.
Thanks, Brooke. Michael Jaffe. Two suggestions I have. First, I'm thrilled to see. I think this perhaps is a record number of folks on a school committee meeting or call. That I saw a peak of 223 participants. So thank you for joining. For the folks, I know that there's a lot of kind of concern and anxiety around what the plan will be in the community, and it's great to have lots of people on this call. But to the extent folks are not as proactive with the people on this call, I'd recommend sending out maybe after each one of our meetings, even if it's a brief email out to the entire community together with the PowerPoint, because there's an awful lot of work that's being done, and it's quite comforting for community members to know that there are a lot of people from all different areas of the community who are doing a lot of research and really paying attention and trying to think about what is going to serve our community the best. So, you know, I can't overstate the value and importance of having that communication going out. Secondly, I would ask that to the maximum extent possible, we try to perhaps take the opportunity to leverage some of the things that we've been talking about in our school committee meetings for future opportunities, educational opportunities, and maybe, you know, some of the silver lining is, and I know Beth has done and her group has done a ton of work around educational models. Perhaps we can take the opportunity to, and I know, Andrew, you've heard before again and again, you know, let's be bold. Let's be bold. Let's take the opportunity to try to be as creative as possible, try to kind of expand the tent of meeting students where they are, where they learn, and perhaps be creative with finding some opportunities that could be a trial run this coming year for future years, and then we can evaluate what works well and what doesn't work well. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Michael, can I comment on that, Brooke?
Of course.
So, Michael, one of the great opportunities, if you ask me, in this new model will be the actual flipped classroom, where they do the actual studying of the topic at home, then actually do the homework or the work with the problems in class. And that is something that teachers, I think, we know we have teachers who've done that in the past, but this is perhaps the optimal opportunity to really try that and make it work and really refine it so it's more effective. So that's a great idea, and I know Beth is, I'm sure, nodding wherever she is on my screen. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. I apologize. What's happened is some of my members have gone to the second page, even though you're on video. So, and I apologize, I didn't see you there. So please go ahead. And you're also muted, or I can't hear you. Still can't hear you. You want me to come back to you? I'm lip reading. Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Colleen.
Thank you. I do have one question about compliance with the masks and how we will be addressing that. You know, just having kids and wearing masks around when we have to wear them. Mine are complaining the entire time. And they're, you know, I see them pull it down, and today my son pulled it down to sneeze. And that's the whole point, is to have it on especially when you sneeze. So I'm wondering if there's any, you know, the reality of it is that we're going to have to really work with the compliance with the masks, if that is what we're going to be doing. The second thing I wanted to ask about the masks is, are there going to be any times, you know, I saw on one of the slides, the first things that you had listed, it said masks for any activities that are not 6 feet apart. Would they be able to have their masks off in school if they had that distance? And that's a, you know, more of a nuanced question. I don't know if they've addressed that at all. And then my final question is about the filtration. I know there are some filters that, you know, Andrew Cuomo was saying in one of his press conferences, they're really trying to get the highest level of filters, the HVAC filters, the HEPA filters. So is that something that we are looking at going to the next level? Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen. Don, do you want to take that, or Andrew? Or
yeah, can I take a quick run at it and then
sure.
Turn it over, Brooke, if it's okay, to Jill or potentially Matt Vitale. I don't know who else from the committee's here, but the one thing I do want to mention is that actually I had a great email or text exchange with Judy Miller this afternoon about the prospect of asking kids, perhaps our kids, teach, maybe develop videos or training videos for other kids about things like the proper way to wear a mask. I think for little kids to hear from older kids can have a really positive impact. So that's a good example of a place we might be able to do that. Jill, I'm wondering if you can hear me and if you could maybe speak to whether or not the state's guidance around the 6-foot piece? Do they still have to wear the masks when they're 6 feet apart? And Colleen, what was your last question?
It was about the filtration, the filter compliance, but then filtration.
So first, I'd just like to say silly me for thinking that this was going to be a webinar format and I was not going to be seen or heard from tonight. So I'm feeling a little on the spot and a little nervous, so forgive me. But with regards to the masks, I think it's a great question. And I think that, you know, all of us in the school building will keep in mind that this is new for the children. It's new for the little kids and it's new for the big kids. So nothing in the way of encouraging people to put their masks on is going to be punitive. And so I hope that that message gets heard first, because that's not going to happen. And they're not going to, you know, the children are not going to be sent to the principal's office because they're not wearing the masks. You know, I think we're all going to encourage the children as best as we can, and we're going to understand that it might be tricky in the beginning. But I think that the best part about this, from what I know about pediatrics and working with children my whole professional life, is that it's the kids that are resilient, right? So it's the kids that just kind of follow along. And if the grown-ups are doing it and saying that this is what we need to do to keep everybody safe, I think the kids follow suit pretty readily with that. So I think, you know, I think there might be some challenges with masks in the beginning, but I don't anticipate it being a gigantic problem that we're going to have to juggle. And as far as the 6 feet, you know, again, I believe at the moment the guidance is if we are within 6 feet of one another indoors, we are wearing masks. And I don't know if, you know, that's going to change with new data, but for right now, that's what we know. And I don't have any information on HVAC, I'm sorry.
I think if I may, thank you, Jill. And FYI, for those who don't know, Jill is our nurse leader. She's also the nurse at Pine Hill School. She's been just a wonderful asset for us as a school system. So with the 6 feet, I think one of the things that's been clear to me is that when you're outdoors, there's less concern. Indoors, I do think that that masks are going to be expected all the time, and at least in my interpretation of the guidance. But with that said, they're also recommending that people have breaks to take these off from time to time. Dawn, can you speak to the filtration thing at all, other than that you're working with the HVAC contractors on that?
Right, and we're actually exceeding industry standards right now on the types of filters that we're using. So we're waiting though for the state guidance to see what they recommend. So we have spent a lot of time with our HVAC contractor. We already had a pretty good filtering system in that you've got your primary and your secondary filter. One's finer than the other. And so we're already at the top of almost the top category of our secondary filter, which is what's bringing the fresh air in. So we feel pretty comfortable about that and have had service people here on site checking all of our systems to make sure they're all operating as part of their preventative maintenance anyway, but we have expedited our preventative maintenance to be ready to open school in the fall. So as we get more guidance, we will work with our, like I said, our HVAC contractor, but that has been a topic of a discussion for us here for about the last month to check all of our systems.
Yeah, we had a really insightful facilities meeting today. So that is obviously ventilation and airflow is a hot topic, and I feel confident. We're lucky. We have buildings that aren't that old, and we have systems that are in good condition. So I came away feeling like we're in a pretty good place. I just want to reiterate, because I do see some parent hands up. It is not our protocol, and never has been, to answer parent questions after the community comment, but we do want to hear from you. So just please reach out to your committee members or that dsreopening@dover-sherborn.org email, and we will certainly answer your questions. But I want to give Anne an opportunity. Could you come back to us?
Nothing.
And make sure the sound on your actual computer is on.
Turned on.
Yeah, make sure the sound on your actual computer is turned on and not just the sound on your Zoom app, because that's what happens to me. Did you hear that?
You could also text your question to any one of the school committee members, Ann, and we could read it for you.
Yeah, and can I just add on the 6 feet distance? So we were told though for obviously students are being requested to eat lunch in the classroom. So obviously can't wear your mask in the classroom. So I think the guidance that we had for eating was that if there was the minimum 6 feet distancing in the classroom for eating, which is where we were thinking we would pull half of the class out and go into the cafeteria with 6 feet distancing. And those are part of the mask breaks that we know we can't always do outside. So Jill, we can clarify that, but we've been asked to give multiple opportunities during the day for mask breaks. So that is a piece that we're looking at how we can fit those into the day. And most likely it's like we maybe split the classes. So half would stay back in the classroom, the half may go someplace else. And granted, we want to expand our outdoor classroom opportunities so that with social distancing at 6 feet, kids can sort of feel like they're normal and not have to wear the mask all day. Because as an adult, even I know going to the grocery store, it's tough. So we want to be safe but accommodating as possible to make these kids feel like it's not a bad thing to have to go to school.
Brooke, you have Nancy Cordell and also Leslie Leon with their hands up.
Okay. And we're waiting for Anne to come back or to email someone. Nancy, you're on my other screen as well. So Nancy, do you want to go?
Question on the guidance from the state for teachers standing and teaching in front of the room. And Jill, I don't know if it's you or someone else to answer this. If they're in front of the room 10 feet away, can they wear a shield? You know what I mean? So at least the students, because it's still hard. I'm trying to learn to speak mask or listen for people with masks on, but just for kids to want to pay attention, as long as they can see the mouth, are the guidance for teachers, wearing a shield in front of the room, or do they have to wear a mask?
I'll take that question. I believe that there will be circumstances where a face shield could be allowed. I'm not sure if that is going to be the standard practice for all teachers. And I don't want to say anything that I'm not 100% sure of, so I'll leave it at that for now. But yes, I completely understand there are special circumstances where you will need to see the teacher's mouth or facial expressions where a face mask may benefit.
So we actually are looking, special ed has found some face masks that are called smile face mask, and they're actually clear where your mouth is. And so we are ordering a sample of those to be tried out in some of our summer programming to see how those work.
If I could, Brooke, this in response to Nancy's question as well, I think this is a good example of something that's evolving. So the teachers, our teacher association is part of the MTA. The MTA is very much engaged in the conversations now with the commissioner, and I'm sure with the health experts from the state with questions like that. I guarantee it. So I am very much certain that we'll get greater clarity as this progresses. As of right now, I don't think that they've addressed that specific question, but I expect there to be more guidance in that regard.
Okay. Think you guys are looking out for me. We're going to go with Leslie next, and then I know Michael, you have Anne's question. You can go after. So Leslie, you're not on my screen, but feel free.
Hi. So I was actually going to ask a very similar question as Nancy. I know for my own children, they prefer to wear the face shields. I just was wondering if that option is being explored. And I feel they are more likely to keep them on, not just for the teachers, but possibly for the students as well. And then I also had another question about the Metco buses and where we stand on that and how the discussion is going with the Metco students regarding the buses.
Who wants to take the busing?
So we're waiting to, obviously, transportation guidance is still coming out, and we're also looking, we did our first cut of the survey today to see who's looking to take buses and what people's situations are. So we haven't had any detailed discussion about that. Keep in mind though that a full-size bus that has a capacity of 71 students is used for our Metco students, which is usually around the 40 range, so that is actually very helpful to us that we already have additional space on that vehicle. And if we incorporate the fact that we will have family units sitting together, a lot of our Metco students are siblings, and so we feel like we won't have a space issue at this juncture in time with the Boston bus.
Okay, Michael, do you want to take Anne's question?
Yes, I will be nowhere nearly as eloquent as Anne is, but I'll have at it. First, thank you to all of the task force members, to the huge efforts behind you, as well as the efforts ahead. There's a ton of work that's going into this, and it is so deeply appreciated. And thank you also to parents willing to volunteer for various and sundry things. I suspect that will be something that will be taken advantage of, and perhaps I would maybe call an audible and suggest that maybe you kind of some parents can organize themselves and come up with some creative ideas to implement community-wise on their own. As a specific question, would like to have more specifics about services for special needs students, whether that be special ed students or any students with particular special needs. Perhaps Kate, you can speak to that a bit, and that would be both over the summer in preparation for the year, as well as during the year itself. Thank you.
So I can speak a little bit first to the summer. So we have most of our services over the summer are remote. There are a few instances where we are in person, and so that was really a matter of preparation and a lot of the guidance that went through the state as well. We have posted recently, and we are going to complete assessments, special education initial assessments, and some reevaluations that had begun or were signed over the closure. So we're working towards that in order to, obviously there are assessments that will be needed in the fall when we return. So trying to mitigate that log jam, as you would say. So we have that going as well. The special education, so on that note, we had started a special education task force that was working alongside the curriculum and instruction groups. And after 1 week, we realized we were all really doing very similar things. So we disbanded the special education group and had all of the members join in to each of the buildings in order, because a lot of what we were talking about hinged on what the schedule looks like, what our classes look like, what kind of teacher and student interaction can we allow for. So this week we had all of the special education staff members in with the subgroups just today, and it was very helpful to have that point of view. So they will be working alongside the curriculum and instruction group on that topic. I know, really the guidance from the state has been to prioritize in whatever model, prioritize in person, because we all, experienced the spring and all would like that as well. But we really want to be safe and make sure that we're thinking through creatively all the different ways to support our students. So within each of the models, the remote, the hybrid, and the in-person, special education is going to be discussing how this fits in with services and supports for students, both within all the regulations around preschool age, students with disabilities, and people who really, or students who really have complex needs and services that really would need to be in person more regularly than maybe the other plans. So it's, we don't have that all laid out yet, but those are some of the things that we're doing in order to make sure that we have special education in every discussion at the building level for the planning.
Brooke, if I may.
Of course.
So I loved, those are great questions. I also really loved Michael's idea of kind of harnessing the offer of help from parents. One thing that I know for sure that we're going to need help with this year, and if you ask me, I'll come up with ideas, but one thing we know we will need help with is substitute teaching. That is for sure. We have a difficult time as it is finding substitutes, and we have teachers with conditions that will make it difficult for them to teach, or family members with conditions that will make it difficult for them to be in on a regular basis. So I'm anticipating a need for substitute teachers. I think we're going to need potentially some nursing help. I know for a fact that we have many teachers who are really worried about daycare, quite honestly. How can they teach if they have to be concerned with their own kids? That's not an easy issue to address, but it's one that's on my mind. Having had kids in daycare all those years, if the school schedule changed, that would have been a huge disruption in our lives, and it's hard enough to raise kids as it is. So anything we can do to find ways to take those kinds of pressures off our teachers' plates, I think would be a good thing. So those are a couple things that come to mind.
Are there any other school committee questions? Sarah, you're up.
Sorry, just making sure I wasn't on mute here. Thank you. Thank you to Dr. Keogh and all who have been working. It sounds like very, very hard in order to plan for all of these different scenarios and think through all of these complicated questions. I guess I just wanted to kind of make a point for those of us who are at the early elementary stage. And just to emphasize, I know that there is no one-size-fits-all solution for any families or any students or any teachers, but particularly with this group of young kids in pre-K, kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, fifth grade, this early group, I think that the challenges before us are particularly pronounced. Kids are notorious about not respecting each other's personal space as a general matter. And many have discussed the difficulties that kids have with masks. And yet, as I read this guidance, to the degree that there is any consensus among our public health experts, and I might add that it's a bit disturbing that there doesn't always seem to be consensus, but to the degree there is consensus, it seems to me that each component that we're putting into place here to ensure the safety of our kids and of our teachers and of our staff, that all of these facets need to work together, right? That we will be the safest we can be if kids are respecting distance, if masks are worn. So I would just say that I hope that there's some extra attention that's being paid to the challenges with this younger group. And also some thought on what the protocols are You know, I understand that we don't want to be punitive, but we need to think through if there are kids that are really not being compliant with masks or with distance, what are the steps that the teachers should be taking in order to address that? When do parents get involved? You know, just how do we make sure that we are keeping each other safe so that we can be in person as much as we can. And to that point, I also wanted to ask a question, and perhaps it's something that we are still awaiting state guidance on, but there's a push and a pull, I think, between wanting to keep each other safe and, you know, some of the expectations surrounding privacy. So I would hope that there are plans being put into place now, I know there are, on what to do in the event of a COVID positive case or a suspected positive case in a classroom, in a child's family, in a teacher, in a teacher's family. And how are we going to navigate between privacy and the community's need to know and decisions that will need to be made in terms of you know, quarantining or changes to the in-person structure in this new world that we're living.
Great question, Sarah. Really important, important pieces there. Because after all, in terms of the masks, you know, this isn't you know, small potatoes. These are serious safety concerns that we have to take seriously. So if we're having issues with kids with not wearing their masks, we will probably have to address it as strongly as we can with families, because if you're the teacher of that student or students who just refuse to comply, how can you feel safe, especially going home at night with your family members? So that's a huge piece, and there definitely have to be protocols in place, like rules, essentially rules around masks, and they need to be clarified. And I do think that that's one of the things, I believe, that was on the slides, like protocols around that is something that the state's expecting us to do. The other piece, darn it, what was the last piece that you just said, Sarah?
Essentially just the question of, you know, where do we fall in terms of privacy versus disclosure when there are COVID positive cases in school or in students or teachers' families, because people will need to know these things and decisions will need to be made, and we'll need to have our sort of plans in place on how to address what may be an inevitability.
Yes, totally appreciate that question. And it's always nice when somebody brings something up that's crossed my mind, because I think that this one has crossed mine and others. I know that the Board of Health will be part of this. So, but that said, you know, the laws are pretty strong around confidentiality and how much we can share. And so I don't know that that's going to be easily solved. It's going to be one of those ones where some people might not be satisfied that there's not enough sharing of who was sick, or families might feel, because of the nature of the coronavirus and its, you know, its contagion, the fact that it's so contagious, that people will want to know where are those lines. Quite honestly, I don't know what they are right at the moment, but I think you're right that we need to know what they are as we go into school.
Andrew, this is Matt Vitale from the Sherborn Board of Health. I'm happy to chime in if that's helpful.
I think it'd be great, Matt. Rick, you okay with that?
Of course. Thank you, Matt.
Absolutely. So I think this is a tension we navigated in March as we had families who had potentially at-risk exposures going into school closure. I think there's a lot that's going to be outside of our hands, because there's some elements of this, even if there's a strong public interest where it's protected health information and we're legally not allowed to disclose it. That doesn't mean that we don't need to have protocols to help identify and communicate to families that may be at risk of exposure. But I don't anticipate we'll be able to say, so-and-so in Miss Jean's class was an exposure, these 3 kids sat next to them. there may be some strategies that need to include a broader swath of students to both mitigate the risk of unidentified spread, as well as to protect the privacy of an individual. One of the reasons this is so important is because we want to make it so that it's easy for families who may be tested without our awareness to communicate that information in a timely fashion. Positive tests go into a state repository and are ultimately tracked down by a public health nurse. We happen to share a public health nurse across Dover-Sherborn, who then does the contact tracing and outreach. But it's a really complicated issue that I can say with a high level of confidence is going to result in lots of people having really complicated feelings as we navigate the school year ahead. And I think for all of us, that goes back to Andrew's point of don't give your kid Tylenol before you send them to school, because the downstream effects are really complicated and kids with COVID can look pretty normal. And so navigating that's going to be something we have to do together, but it's going to be pretty tough.
We can also work to not stigmatize kids or families who end up. I mean, you can take every precaution and still, that does not mean that you're doing something that's not, following all the safety protocols. So it happens. So the more that we can not stigmatize and be inclusive, I think, as a community, then the more open people are going to feel to disclose their results. So I think that's going to be an interesting, oh gosh, where did you go? Going forward. Are there any other questions from school committee?
Leslie.
Leslie and Lynn.
Okay, Leslie first.
Hi, I just have one more question. What do we know about the availability of COVID testing for both the students and staff for the upcoming year?
Does Jill want to take that, or where do you want that to go, Andrew?
Actually, I'd put that back to Matt.
Sure.
If you would.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So in general, I would say testing in Massachusetts is doing better than other states, but there's wide variability in turnaround time, which I think will be a really important issue for our students. So as an example, there are some sites that have a 20-hour turnaround and some sites that have a five-day turnaround. I think one of the things we're trying to do in terms of homework is, while neither the district nor the boards of health could endorse a testing strategy, we've identified the 7 sites that are within a 10-mile radius of the middle school to say, let's try to find out the details for these sites so that we can communicate that to parents. There is some variability in cost depending on people's insurance status. I think testing will be a really important part for kids who are symptomatic, what we see from the state is that most of the people who are tested for COVID don't have it. So in the current samples, like 50 people are tested and 1 has COVID, 49 don't. And that's what the similar symptom profile will have in the fall. So I think we will need to test lots of students who will test negative. And if we're doing that, it means that we're doing it well, but we'd like to make that as easy as possible. I think that some of that could change depending on the availability of reagents. If we continue to see massive spikes in supply line issues, I think that could become a larger issue for us. It doesn't seem like it's a major issue at the moment.
Lynn, do you want to go next?
Sure. 2 questions. One, since our role as a school committee is mainly sort of policy, budgets, what impact is this having on our preparations, having on our budget? Or asked another way, is there anything that you anticipate you're going to need from us as far as, revising the budget? I imagine people that have been working all summer on, classroom configurations and, cleaning the building and are not working for free. And it's not something that has been contemplated in our budget, or maybe it has.
So if I could just speak to, and I know you have a second piece to that, Lynn, but if I could speak to that first, I'm actually going to pass it over to Dawn. But the state and the federal government has made funding available to schools and to communities, and we hope to access some of that. What else would you add to that, Dawn? I mean, as far as like the anticipated needs, this was a real deal breaker, frankly, Lynn, when they changed to 3-foot minimum, 6-foot maximum. It was 6-foot minimum And if they stuck with that 6-foot minimum, quite honestly, we would have potentially needed to come up with many more classroom spaces and probably more teaching staff. So we're lucky in that we are not facing that, but we do still anticipate some additional costs. I'll let Dawn speak to that.
Right, so there have been multiple grants that you've seen out there. So the CARES funding, we, as 3 different school districts, there was one grant that we have we're readily accessible to, and then there's a bigger one that both Dover and Sherborn individually have that right now we're working as a region to be able to draw upon those funds as member town, as them being our member. So there is quite a bit of money that we're actually hoping to use for technology. We luckily we have a lot of 12-month staff. So as far as the summer additional cleaning and the classroom configuration, our custodians, this is their busy season. So they're used to that kind of work. So there are no additional costs from that vantage point for us. As far as the PPE, there's also grant funding both within our grants and also with the 2 towns. So some of these additional costs, we're not having to dip into our operating budget that you guys have all approved, but we're able to use other sources of funds. Up until this point, that has been enough to allow us not to have to worry about exceeding our already approved budgets. So that's the good news.
Great. And then the second piece was, so our contracts with our staff, is anyone focused on implications under the contract? I mean, I know I've been asked, so I should point the finger right back at me, but have there been any discussions around, you know, what impact a lot of these decisions will have on our staff contracts?
So one of the important steps that we're taking is impact bargaining with our certainly our largest unit, the Teachers Association, on impact of any of these recommended changes to their contract. And obviously we have to work with them to resolve those issues. And actually the school committee technically is the body that negotiates that contract. So when I say we need to impact bargain, I actually mean you. But that's usually done through the superintendent and or at least a smaller body of individuals, not necessarily as large as the body that negotiated the full contract, but something similar to that, where we discuss what kinds of changes we're going to go with. I was on a call this afternoon with the attorney that the Superintendent's Association consults with, a gentleman named Mike Long. He is actually, he made it clear that the decision ultimately on which model we go with rests with the school committee. So obviously with the strong recommendation of the superintendent. So I hope to have it in a place where you'll feel comfortable doing that. But so these things are really very much connected to the school committee, and that's what I can tell you at this point. But that's why, by the way, that, and I know Laura's on here, I think, Laura McGovern, the president of the DSEA. It's why we felt, together, felt it was really important that we had representation from the DSEA, especially the DSEA, at the table as we're having these conversations, these subcommittee conversations about teaching and learning. If the Teachers Association is not there, that's a problem. So they are now going to, not only are they serving and had been serving on subcommittees, but now will attend the steering committee meetings where we report out the work of the individual subcommittees so that they have an opportunity to weigh in on if they think we're going down a road that's not going to work for them from their perspective, A, and B, so that they can communicate what they're learning about this to their members, so that people don't get caught off guard. That's usually the issue, right? I mean, somebody's making decisions in the ivory tower and then sends it down, and everyone else below says, I didn't have any idea this was happening. So we're trying to avoid that. But we've had a great relationship with all of our associations, and I don't expect that to be any different as we go through this, but they are partners, so we have to work in partnership with them.
Great. So will you be reaching out to one of us or to me when the issue of just getting down to brass tacks on the contract, how's that going to work?
I think we have a negotiation subcommittee. Is that an assignment that goes with each school committee? If I believe it is it not?
Yeah, I'm on it.
Yep. So that would be the body that that works, that we work with.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you. Are there any other school committee questions? I know it's a lot to digest, and there will be questions going forward. Is there anything else right now? I want to say to our parents, I know this is an odd format. It took me time to get used to. Please, I think it was helpful thing, but this is our time for the school committee to meet, because we have to meet in open session. So this is our meeting, and that's why we have parent comments at the beginning, and then we get on the business of the meeting. So that's the reason why we don't have parent comments as we go through the meeting. But I would encourage you, I'm sure that a lot of things have come out of this presentation and this conversation, so please reach out to the DS reopening at Dover-Sherborn.org. It is monitored by a school committee member who will then forward your email to the appropriate subcommittee for answering or for contemplation. So I really encourage you to utilize that resource. Thank you, Dr. Keogh, and all of our subcommittee members who've answered our questions. I think that will conclude the reopening presentation for now, and we will reconvene in 2 weeks. So the next item on the agenda is our superintendent update. And Andrew, I'm going to throw that to you.
Okay. Well, timing is not great, I know, but I want to take this opportunity to inform our communities that after much consideration, I have decided that the 2020-21 school year will be my last at Dover-Sherborn, and that effective June 30th, 2021, I will be retiring. So as I mentioned in my letter, it has been an honor to have had this chance to serve the very school system that I attended as a kid. But after 34 years in public education, I feel like it's time to pursue other possible life ventures. I want to be sure to assure all our members of the community that I remain committed to serving our school system. It is my hometown school system, remember. So especially during this time of need. And I also recognize, however, that searching for and transitioning to a new leader takes time, and thus I'm providing our school committees with as much advance notice of my intentions as possible. So although we clearly will face big challenges this year, I'm sure we'll continue to rise to the occasion and that our students will continue to flourish. I look forward to facing these challenges together and to leaving Dover-Sherborn in the best possible position upon my departure in the spring of 2021. And I just want to take this opportunity to formally thank our staff for all they've done for me and for my family over the years. My daughters are living proof that we have amazing educators in this school system. And as a family, we feel blessed for having had the opportunity to be part of the Dover-Sherborn community. I also want to thank all of you, our school committee members, past and present, for continually supporting me and our team in this challenging work. We're only as successful as the people around us. So I look forward to completing my career in public education in this place that sits closest to my heart. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Angie, did you want to say something?
I did.
Dr. Keough, I would be remiss if I didn't say on behalf of all of our committees and all of us present, how much you have done and how much it's been appreciated. It has been a lot of changes that we've had to go through in your tenure. You spearheaded a lot of large projects, and it was with a lot of thought and foresight and diligent hard work. And I just want to tell you how much it has been appreciated and how nice it has been to work with you. And we have truly enjoyed your dedication, your professionalism, and your experience, and you will be missed. So while we have a lot of work to do, we just want you to know that everything you have put in the past has not gone unnoticed, and we thank you for all of the work and your dedication.
Thank you, Angie. And well, you know, we're not done. So there's a lot of work left. People, please take note that I did not retire in June of this past year. No, we're all in, and we have a lot of work to do, and we know we can do it and do it well. So thank you, Angie.
We have a lot of work to do, but a lot of time to give you accolades as well. So thank you. We're pleased to have you for this year. It will be a well-earned retirement. So thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone have anything else? Okay, we will see you in 2 weeks with a further update. We're going to adjourn and then go into executive session. And because it's my first executive session, please help me get this verbiage correct. So first I adjourn.
We poll to go into executive session.
Okay.
So we do it on each committee.
Okay. So will the region, or actually Angie, you're already there. So how about Sherborn?
Yeah, Sherborn, take yourself off of mute, and I'm going to call on each of you, and you can say poll to go into executive, yes to go into executive sessions. So Nancy?
Yes to executive session.
And that's Nancy Cordell. And then Amanda?
Amanda Brown, yes.
And Megan Page?
Megan Page, yes.
Okay, does the region want to go next?
Sure. If the region could please take themselves off mute. Michael Jaffe?
Michael Jaffe, yes.
Judy Miller?
Judy Miller, yes.
Ann Hovey? Hovey, yes. Lynn Collins?
Lynn Collins, yes.
And Kate Potter?
Kate Potter, yes.
All right, Dover, if you want to take yourselves off mute. Going in order, I see you. Sarah?
Sarah Gutierrez Dunn, yes.
Colleen?
Colleen Burt, yes.
Leslie?
Leslie Leon, yes.
And Mark?
Mark Huey, yes.
Okay, and let me just confirm, everybody has the separate Zoom link to meet in that session, is that correct? Yep. Okay, with that said, then I'm going to adjourn the Dover-Sherborn and Dover-Sherborn Regional School Committee meeting for tonight, and we will see you all soon. Thank you.